Anunnaki people. There are people who believe they're the direct descendants of these beings and that they have the right to rule over human beings still to this very day. And they came from Nibiru. They got down to Earth, and this is about 450,000 years ago according to the tablets. The Anunnaki, who are also the Atlanteans, that's the same people. The Atlantean is a civilization. Anunnaki means those who came from heaven to earth. And they started off with this cloning system at first. So Isis says, I have an idea. She says, I'm going to take an egg from one of the women, and they took the egg, and she cleaned out some of the genetic material. They added some of their essence to the egg. They put it in her womb. She took it to term 10 months, and then you see her in this famous cylinder scroll holding up this baby saying, my hands have created it. She gave birth to the Adamu, which means first man. So they put Adam in this Eden, E-D-I-N, and this Eden was this laboratory where they would have these mating rituals between the different peoples. And when they got Adam in there, they tried to mate him with these other ones. They made Eve, they mated them, and bingo, it worked. Crazy story. That was about 200,000 years ago.
All right, y'all, we're going to deal with this challenging information, which contradicts what Zecharia Sitchin has been displaying, that the gods came from Nibiru. However, in the book, The Anunnaki and the Sacred Science of the Black God by Dr. Wesley Muhammad, he challenges and claims that Mr. Sitchin, his story holds no weight when it comes to a foundational basis to prove his claim. Let's take a look, y'all. Stitchin's basic claim is that the Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia wrote about visually depicted a particular narrative of foreign origins from a far away planet called Nibiru. A group of astronaut gods called the Anunnaki traveled to Earth 450,000 years ago in search of gold to take back to their home planet. While a landing party of 50 astronauts, the Anunnaki from Nibiru established the first Earth station in the city of Eridu in modern-day Iraq. These alien gods found here on Earth, archaic, humanoid population. This is what they're supposed to find, right? And archaic, humanoid population. Okay, Homo erectus, that is. And they deliberately crossed their own alien DNA with the ape man. Y'all hear that? The result was mankind. The purpose of this grafting project was to produce a slave population that would mine gold in African mines, freeing the Anunnaki gods of this task. As Sitchin wrote, the evidence of the ancient text Mesopotamian as well as biblical suggests that the process adapted for merging two sets of genes, those of a god and those of Homo erectus, involved the use of male genes as the divine element and female genes as the earthly element. If the clay unto which the godly element was mixed was an earthly element, as all texts insist, then the only possible conclusion is that the male sperm of a god, his genetic material, was inserted into the egg of an ape woman. So, let me tell y'all something. First of all, this is in accord with Charles Darwin. And if Zecharia Sitchin is correct, and Charles Darwin, his theory that we evolved from apes, when I say we, they are specifically talking about the so-called black men and women, being that we are the most oldest people on the planet. Everyone else just got here like 6,000 years ago, according to their own Australian DNA genetic research sciences. Okay, so if what Sitchin and Mr. Charles Darwin is saying, then the racist Caucasian enslavers are correct with the 3/5 compromise as far as classifying us as 3/5 of a human. Meanwhile, when you go into history in your research, we were the ones that took them out of the caves, taught them how to read, how to write. When Christian Europe was 99% illiterate, our ancestors, the Moors, had libraries of over 450,000 books. Okay, this has been documented, and maybe even more books than that. So we have to think about the library of Alexandria that was destroyed also in ancient Egypt. Now, never mind that we taught them how to even speak a language. So the story is really not adding up. Being that we are over millions of years old, our DNA has been on this planet so long. And also the Twas, they have a different creation story that does not say we come from an ape and evolved into a human. Furthermore, I must conclude that me, myself, I must conclude that the story doesn't hold weight. Because if we were to use biblical text, we are told that we were made in the image of God. So if we are made in the image of God, and whatever is in its most original state is that of God. So if we evolved from a monkey, then God himself would be a monkey. It just don't make sense to me, y'all. But let us continue and see what Dr. Wesley has to say concerning Stitchen's notation concerning these Anunnaki. This distinctly Stitchen tale is transparently an adaptation from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching about Yaqub and the origin of human races via grafting. While Stitchen's narrative has since become profoundly popular, it is remarkably foundationalist in its key aspects. Take one example. Stitchen never did prove a textual reference from the Sumerian corpus to support the claim of gold mining deities. Huh? Let me read that one more time for y'all, just in case y'all ain't hear it. For y'all in the back that ain't really paying no attention. Let me read it one more time and say it a little bit louder. Stitchen never did prove a textual reference from the Sumerian corpus to support the claim of gold mining deity. The entire corpus of Sumerian literature is searchable at the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, and no reference to the Anunnaki mining gold is found. Now, I'm going to stop right here for a second. I got to say something. Because there's all of this gold all over the earth. Queen Elizabeth hiding gold, stole gold from Africa. Other people, showing off gold, keeping it in secret. And if this gold was such a big deal to these extraterrestrial Anunnaki, why don't they come and snag it? Or is it that the ones that have the gold in their possession are these Anunnaki? And they're storing it themselves for a time when they're going to take it to this planet called Nibiru, or use it for this gold refinement dust that they were supposedly breathing in their atmosphere for them to uphold their light body. I mean, which is it? I mean, make this make sense, y'all. Anyway, let's keep it pushing. Certainly, Stitchen's theory of genetic hybridization, which with ancient primates, is also totally unsupported by the Sumerian text. Stitchen's evidence appears to consist of a mixture of conjecture and simplistic interpretation of symbols and a highly interpretive and unsystematic reading of the standard translations of Sumerian and Akkadian religious texts, as Stephen Williams rightly pointed out in 1988. The late Dr. Michael S. Heiser, who had a PhD in Hebrew Bible and ancient Semitic language, Semitic language, from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, produced a body of work that shows Stitchen is wrong. I can tell you and show you Dr. Heiser, I ain't sure if I'm saying that name right, declared that what Zechariah Stitchen has written about Nibiru, the Anunnaki, the Book of Genesis, the Nephilim, and a host of other things has absolutely no basis and is in the real data of the ancient world. So he's saying Zechariah Stitchen is full of shit. But Heiser was not the only credible vocal critic, of Stitchen. Detailed critics have been offered as well by aerospace engineer Dr. Robert Heffernick, author Jason Colavito, authors Jason Jorel and Sarah Former, and author Ian Lawton. Their critiques are sound. Stitchen has been proven wrong on several points. For example, his claim that the quarry marks identifying Khufu as the builder of the next page, the Great Pyramid, was fake. In his reading of Cylinder Seals, VA 242, as a Sumerian depiction of the solar system in its 9 planets plus 1 planet, both claims are demonstrably erroneous. So in other words, he's saying Zechariah Stitchen making this shit up. So they mix truth with falsehood. Now we are taught that these gods came from Nibiru, from another planet outside of our planet. Meanwhile, in the Bible, in Habakkuk 3, 3, and 4, it says God came from T-Man, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise, and his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. Meanwhile, the name Eliphaz for the spokesman of Edomite wisdom may have been suggested by the author of Job, by the tradition which gave the name Eliphaz to Esau's eldest son, the father of T-Man. So we have the father of T-Man, who is named Eliphaz. This gives us an identifier as far as genetic goes of what blood lineage the god is in. So technically the god is in the bloodline and he's born from a certain bloodline or family. This is why God is a man. According to the scripture, even the God of Abraham is a man, as we have clearly seen if you've been following me when it comes to the God of Abraham. So what I propose to you all is that the God of all the gods, or the supreme being, is from this earth according to the scripture. If anyone disapproves of this, then you are not a true believer of the scripture itself, and that's fine. However, according to the scripture of the Bible, this God would be over the extraterrestrials or the Galactic Federation, the god that is coming from T-Man, or rather Mount Paran. This location is in Saudi Arabia. T-Man is also a small city in Saudi Arabia. So however we look at it, we're looking for a god to come from Saudi Arabia who is supposed to be the head or the commander-in-chief of all of these gods, aka extraterrestrial or angels. He is supposed to be the commander-in-chief. As we continue in the book, The Anunnaki and the Sacred Science of the Black God by Wesley Muhammad. Here, Wesley Muhammad is challenging Stitchin concerning Nibiru. Stitchin also misidentified Nibiru, found in the Mesopotamian text. He claimed that it is the 12th planet recognized in Sumerian cosmology, and he claimed that it was a distant planet beyond Pluto that enters our solar system only every 3,600 years. Stitchin's Nibiru was inhabited by the Anunnaki gods. The Sumerians Nibiru, however, knew none of this. As Dr. Claude Winters wrote, a careful translation of these seals indicate that they have nothing to do with space travel or the so-called Nibiruans. The Mesopotamian text describe Nibiru as an astronomical body that marks an equinox. The term was specifically identified with the planet Jupiter in or a star Jupiter, and less frequently with Mercury. Dr. Emmanuel Freedom of the International Association for Assyriology published a paper in the Cuneiform Digital Library Bulletin demonstrating this, and he confirmed to Dr. Heiser that his analyzation of the extant cuneiform evidence made clear to me that Zechariah Stitchin was confused by earlier translations. While Stitchin's Nibiru enters near Earth once every 3,600 years, the Sumerian Nibiru is visible from our planet every year. Nowhere do the Sumerian texts hint that Nibiru is inhabited, and never is Nibiru associated with the origin of the Anunnaki. Sumerian cosmology only knew 5 planets plus the sun and the moon. It's only Stitchin's cosmology that has 12 planets. He goes on to say, Christian author and Stitchin follower Eric von Denenberg tries to rescue Stitchin in his article. Heiser is wrong, he writes. According to Heiser, there is no single Sumerian text that associates the Anunnaki with Nibiru. He then challenges ancient astronaut theorists to show him such a text. He encourages investigators to use the online electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature to do the research. However, according to ETCSL, not only are the Anunnaki found in Nibiru, but they are found frequently. In these translations, Nibiru is referred to as Nibiru, and the Anunnaki are referred to as the Enuna. The reader the reader should be aware that no legitimate scholar denies that the Anunnaki, the Ennuku, and Enna, and Nibiru are not the same. which raises the question: Is Heiser really not aware of this? If so, this is certainly an amateurish blunder on his part. All right, so he's challenging the pretense that of which Stitchin has claimed. All right, he goes on to say Stitchin's UFO theory is as follows. After the Anunnaki left their home planet Nibiru 450,000 years ago en route to Earth, they stopped off at Mars and established a base there. Other members of the traveling crew proceeded to Earth, but it is not the Anunnaki themselves who are actually flying the UFOs. Rather, the pilots of these craft are artificial humanoid robots, the EBEs, which were created by the Anunnaki, who themselves are back on the Mars base, controlling the robots in our flying craft, the Scout ship, remotely. While it is appropriate to integrate the Sidana and other Mars anomalies research into the UFO discussion, I have shown in my recent book that Mars is not the base of operation for the advanced craft that are flying around within Earth's sphere. And the whole Anunnaki from planet Nibiru claim is totally foundationalist, as we saw above. It is the teachers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that helps us put the Anunnaki gods in their proper context. As we go into the chariots of the black gods, the reality and the alien hoax by Wesley Muhammad, we find out some more astounding information. On page 236, we go to, in the novel Mars. This is written by, von Braun. In the novel, Mars is home of an ancient superior civilization, a technological utopia that resides under the Martian surface. The population of Mars, according to von Braun's science fiction novel, is very human-like. The description that von Braun gives of the Martian population is intriguing, to say the least. Von Braun wrote, a diminutive, dark-haired figure of human bearing and carriage was walking down the length of the great room. He stopped and inspected one pump after another. As he gradually approached the spot above which they kept their watch, the Martian wore a white garment reminiscent of a Japanese kimono with multicolored ornamentation. The man, for no other name could be applied with him, was beardless. His face was swarthy, with warm, friendly eyes and delicate features. His arms and legs showed nothing different from those of Homo sapiens, as amplified by the quaking observers and the transparent roof. On the transparent roof, Almighty God must have found that our species has some good points if He chooses to plant something so much like us on Mars. But look at the enormous skull the fellow has, my dear chap. If what that skull contains is all intelligence, we may well be able to learn something yet from these bally Martians. Aside from his stature, which was shorter than their own by a foot or so, in his large cranium, he exhibited no major difference from terrestrial man. So he goes on to say the typical Martian in von Braun's informed imagination was diminutive, about a foot shorter than a typical earthling, possessed a large cranium, otherwise was very human in appearance and carriage. In fact, man is the most apt description of the Martian. Possessed arms, legs, no different from that of the Homo sapien. Possessed dark hair and a beardless face with delicate features and warm and friendly eyes. He was black, swarthy. Traces back to the Old English swart, black, dark, and Proto-Germanic swarta, dark colored, black, all the way back to the Proto-Indo-European root, swardo, dirty, dark, black. In Baltimore in the 1870s, German-speaking households referred to their black servants as Die Schwarz. Blacks was Asiatic. Von Braun hints at this fact when describing the Martians' dress. The Martians wore a white garment, resentment of a Japanese cameo with multicolored orientation. Now, we know that they have to, in order to hide truth, make it seem like a fictional book. Meanwhile, they are incorporating truth within these books. So let us not forget this. Now, it goes on to say von Braun's imaginative Martians matches the descriptions of the Roswell body, which von Braun was allegedly a witness to. It thus appears that he fictionalized the truth which he knew of the bodies of his science fiction novel written in New Mexico in the year following von Braun's encounter with the bodies. Now let's take a look at the actual bodies that they found in the Roswell crash, in which they lied about. But let's look at what some of the actual first-hand people that saw them had to say. Okay, so here at the RAA base hospital where the alien bodies were taken for cursory examination prior to being flown out. This took place in 1949. Now let's see what this lady had to say, or whoever it was that examined them. All right, let's get to the point though. The RAF, we'll just say, for RAAF, base called Dennis on July 9th or 10th, 1947, and requested child-sized, hermetically sealed casket. Dennis went to the base and had lunch with Miriam. He instantly recognized the shock that she wore like a garment. Miriam divulged to him what she experienced, and she told him about the bodies. She saw three. Two were badly mangled and one was in pretty good condition. Dennis would later say, I don't think she said alien bodies. I think she said foreign bodies. This suggests that the body struck her as terrestrial rather than extraterrestrial. In fact, she told Dennis, really, what they looked like was ancient Chinese. But the skin was black. The images of what Marine witnessed in that examination room. In that building right off. Okay. Were ethic in her very psyche. The experience traumatized Mary M. Bush the duration of her life, which ended tragically, likely by murder, though the coroner's reported listed it as suicide, so we know how they go. Because she saw too much and she couldn't hold it in. So they saw what looked like ancient black Chinese. So this is where we get the Anu people from. The ancient Japanese, the original Japanese called themselves the Anu people. But check this out, right? Asiatics, not alien, okay? Now, the four creatures of Ezekiel, a wheel, represents the four colors of the original people of the earth. The wheel is the power of four creatures, namely the four colors of the black man. Black, brown, yellow, and red, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad says. Now, let us continue with encounters that people had reported. Okay, leave us. First, we're going to start with him. According to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, it took 20 years to build the mother plane, the perfect machine. It took flight for the first time in 1929. There was a number of key sightings of the wheel and the baby planes in this early period. We only cite two here to involve encounters with the pilots of these crafts. Levis Brosu of Fermi Nueve, Quebec was one of the first persons in Canada to encounter a flying saucer as he was riding home on horseback on or about June 15, 1929. His horse got very nervous. On the hillside, Brosu saw a black cloud with a yellowish light coming from within. He thought a thunderstorm was brewing. Brosu approached within 150 feet of what turned out to be a dark big disc on the ground. It was a circular object 15 foot high with a diameter of about 50 feet. The object had windows lit like the moon, making the disc look like a cloud with yellow like dandelions enclosed in a surrounding darkness. It had protuberances 3 feet apart all around the circumference. Outside the object, Brosu saw 5 or 4 small men who seemed like yellowish colored men. They were running around in a 20-foot radius circle. Then he saw the circular craft rise off the ground, purring like a milk operator. As it passed over Brosu's head with a rush of air at around 50 miles, the disc illuminated him and then in the ground, which trembled. As the craft passed, Brosu heard 2 voices speaking from within it. First a small voice and then a loud voice. So here's a sketch of the craft that was witnessed by Levis Brosu in 1929. Not much of a sketch. It's supposed to be the location. But anyway, it goes on to say, a significant encounter also occurred in Texas in 1930, the year Master Farad Muhammad began his public mission in America. In March 1968, a female witness in this encounter wrote to the Condon Committee, the U.S. Air Force-sponsored study of UFOs at the University of Colorado. She revealed her encounter that took place 38 years earlier. While driving in the family car one morning in 1938 in an isolated hilly area, she encountered a large craft on the side of the road. It was about 100 feet across. It was sort of shiny, gunmetal color, round and shaped like two diner plates face to face, with a dome in the upper top side. The door of the craft was open and a cholt, whatever that is, was let down to the ground. Okay, that was the door. With the craft was a human appearing group that consisted of several small persons and one man of normal size. I'd say about 10 feet 10 inches to 6 feet tall and about 165 to 180 pounds. As the witness shared what the condom committee, with the condom committee. Okay, this person, the normal sized man, came walking in the road to meet me. He forced me to stop while he talked to me, or at least I think he talked, although I did not see his lips move, so it was telepathic. And he turned his face away and looked down. While I seemed to hear him speaking, several other persons came walking up behind him. I say 8 to 10. I took these persons to be a troop of Boy Scouts. About 8 to 10 years old, average size. However, when near me, I saw, let me see. She says, I saw that there was a big difference. They look a bit like Japs or Chinese. They had very large slanted eyes, very large cheekbones, and very thin lips. And they did not look like children, but adults. They smiled at me, but did not speak. I had to smile back because they were sort of pushing each other around horseplay, like each one trying to get in front to see better and acting like kids will. Now, what she notices is that these people is what we would consider the ancient Anu people, hence the Anunnaki. So remember, I talked about the Anu, the original Japanese people, which were known as the Anu people, which are the original Twas of, we would say, China and Japan. Now check this out, right? So it would be similar to these type of people. 6,000-year-old Negrito skull confirms presence of short, dark-skinned people in Taiwan before indigenous tribes appeared. Okay, so these would be the phenotype, if anything, of these Asiatic original Japanese people, or people that she's witnessing that were horseplay. Now this is a description of what she saw. Okay, so you got the spacecraft here, you got the bigger people coming out, the taller ones, and you got the smaller ones running around horseplaying. Okay, and this is her vehicle supposedly, and this is a compilement of what had occurred, just to sum it up, of what I already read. Alright, this book is loaded with a bunch of encounters of people bringing forth their testimonies, but I'm going to read one more of these encounters, and we're going to wrap this video up because I don't want to make it too long, because I can make this video extremely long. But one of the most important and authentic accounts come from Papua New Guinea in June, July, and August 1959. As the famed UFOologist J. Allen Hynek wrote in 1975, the sightings at Baonia, New Guinea, made in 1959, retain all their mystery after many investigations and many attempts at explanation. The case is exceptional in the quality of the witnesses, the number and clarity of the description and the communication it applies between human witnesses and the occupants of a UFO. Okay, now he goes on to say, Hynek fails to emphasize here that the human witnesses communicated with human UFO occupants. The witnesses were Father William B. Gill, an Anglican priest in charge of the mission of Bomenia, Papua, and 30 others, 6 teachers, and the remainder children. After the sighting, 24 signatures appeared on a statement testifying that they observed the phenomenon. The first sight took place on June 26. The report issued by Gill and signed by the witnesses read in part. A large UFO was first sighted by Anna Laurie. At 6 p.m., I called Anois and several others. We stood in the open to watch. Although the sun had set, it was quite light for the following 15 minutes. Okay, that means my phone about to go out. Okay, can y'all still see that? Anyway, I'm gonna read it. Just try to take my word on it. Okay, we watched as figures appeared on the top. 4 of them. I had no doubt that they were human. It was possible the same object that I took to be the mothership last night. 2 smaller UFOs were seen in the same time stationary. On the one part, 2 of the figures seemed to be doing something near the center of the deck. They were occasionally bending over and raising their arms as though adjusting or setting up something that was not visible. One figure seemed to be standing looking down on us, a group of about a dozen. So this is the sketch that was drawn. Okay. So you got them waving at them. Several days later, Father Gill added an abdomen of his report. Have been having further experiences lately with the UFO on Saturday night. I counted 1 large and 7 small UFOs on Sunday. 1 large, 2 small on Monday, 1 large and 4 small. Yeah, I'll see that. Anyway, believe it or not, Aeneas mission boys and I exchanged hand signals. See that? With the occupants of the mothership. After, where we at? 6 p.m., there is no doubt that she is occupied by at least 4 men. Anyway, so you got different accounts of what took place. Until then, I hope y'all learned something from this video. That just like there are outside extraterrestrials, there are beings that come from inside of our earth, or that are on our earth, that these beings that occupy these crafts are highly melanated. It's been hidden from the world. They don't want you to know. They want to keep everything hidden. They don't want us to know about the chariots of the black gods. Anyway, until next time, may the force be with y'all. Peace. They made a movie from this book. They call it John Carter. The movie is called John Carter, but this book is written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. It was written back in the 1800s. And in the book is more different from the movie, because in the book, the gods of Mars that live in the core of Mars is actually black people. But in the movie, there's no black people, period. But in this book, black people is all throughout this book. There's also a yellow race in this book, but in the movie, they just got the green people and shit and the red-looking people, the Martians. Like, for instance, what would be our hollow Earth, they also have a hollow Mars, and so they live inside of Mars, the Martians do, or these black people. And he was talking about the spaceships that they flew on. Now, this shit written back in the 1800s. So I think there's some truth to it. And also, the ruler that the surface dwellers prayed to was a lady called Isis the Eternal. But the black people knew that Isis was actually a human being. But see, the surface dweller thought she was some type of spook. Same thing it is on today. They think God is a spook. But actually, Isis lived in the core of Mars, in the center, inside of Mars. And she was an old, ugly-ass, snagger-toothed woman with hardly no hair on her head. And guess what she did? She had the black people that were driving and navigating these spaceships to abduct the surface dwellers, the red people, the yellow people, and she would eat them. If this don't sound like some Illuminati type shit, well, these motherfuckers taking people underground in their underground caverns. Listen to Arizona Wilder. All right? And they eating goddamn people. And her ugly ass was doing the same shit in this book. Okay? And she was revered as something divine shit. And then you couldn't even look at her, because they said in the book, it said that the black people, when they finally got to John Carter, they took his ass. They made him, see, you're talking about the planet. See, but they made him crawl backwards towards her so he couldn't see her, because they said if you looked at her, you would die. Meaning that was going to kill your ass. So he was not allowed to look at her. But later on, a whole bunch of chaos started. It was an uprising. He started uprising that bitch, and he finally saw her ugly ass. So anyway, that's in that book. And they put shit in books because they have to tell the truth. It's a part of universal law.
There used to be what you call millions of years ago, in your times of counting, a civilization on the planet you call Mars. We have told you that many of the Martians, in that sense, as you would recognize them, after there was a natural disaster that rendered the planet mostly non-inhabitable, did incarnate and reincarnate upon your planet of Earth, and so in that sense, many of you are Martians in that sense. However, there are still some of the originals. Also, we have discussed, as we were asked many times, the idea of many of the probes that your planet has sent to your Martian planet, in that they seem to cease to function as soon as they arrive. It has to do with the fact that someone at the other end did not want the probes there and did something about it. We would direct your attention to another thing we have said, and that is, as we have been asked many times about many of the places on your planet, and especially with regard to what you call the vortices, the doorways, the gateways that exist upon your planet in energy terms that connect your world to other worlds, other realms, other dimensions of reality. We direct your attention to many of the things we have said about what you call your Santa Fe area. We have told you many times that it is a unique kind of portal in that there is, shall we say, a similar portal of similar frequency on many other worlds that tie directly into that portal you know on your planet as Santa Fe. And so it could be said, in a way, that there is a Santa Fe on many different planets, and to be in that vortex is to automatically connect you energetically, dimensionally, to many, many, many other civilizations and realities. And the idea is that the pilot of the ship, in that sense, is bonded to the ship telepathically. Thus, then, only the pilot can fly it, because only the pilot can communicate with that particular ship, which is, in a sense, a physicalized symbol of the pilot's own higher mind. Does that make sense in your language?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, all right. If you were to board one of our ships, you would see the idea of the so-called control console, but it would be completely blank. It would be a whitish crystalline material that would look completely devoid of any controls. That's because in the telepathic connection between the pilot and the ship, the pilot is the only one that can see the controls.
Ah, that makes perfect sense. Well, to me.
Oh, all right. Makes perfect sense to us, too. That's why we do it.
Is there on your craft a structure of command dynamics, shall we say, that exists? Do you have like a captain or a cook?
The pilots, well, we don't eat anymore. We don't sleep anymore. So we don't need cooks in that sense anymore. We used to eat in that way that you do, but we have evolved beyond that. We're becoming what we call quasi-physical. Nevertheless, we don't really have a hierarchical structure in the way that your planet does, but the idea is that every ship is itself a sentient being.
Those encounters you have come to know as the Phoenix Lights, being representative of one such ship of that group who shall be the first, and are now, through us, allowed to represent that as we are, Ethithani and you are Anani, they are the Shalanaya, which means those who will come first. The Shalanaya are our cousins, our brethren, and your immediate children. From those experiences you have labeled abduction on your planet, which is for the further perpetuation of the species of those who made us. Your counterpart, humans in a parallel reality, who have mutated beyond the recognition of the human form. The family that shall return, the first of which being the Shalanaya. As they return, as they open contact, they will bring gifts of knowledge and awareness. They will remind you of your true histories, not history in the singular, but histories, all the way back to the origins of the DNA that has plied its way through space, finally arriving in the solar system you call your own, and setting up incarnations on the planet that has been destroyed, Marduk, on the planet that has been destroyed, Mars, on the planet that has yet to be seen as whether it will live or die, the Earth, but which we know you will continue on with. For we would not at this point be speaking with you had you not taken the fork that would allow for the family reunion.